Things are about to fall apart in this country in a way that no Hollywood screenwriter could have ever predicted. There's always something written into the zombie stories that everybody misses and nobody really thinks about long term. What is that? The zombies are all innocent. Wait, what are you talking about, Mikey? They're these shambling dead and they're going to come eat your brain. Yeah, but how did they get that way? They were the victim of some virus that came along and turned them into a zombie, or they were bitten by another zombie and became one because of that. It was nothing they ever did of their own volition that was wrong, though, that turned them into these horrible creatures that are going to come chew your face off. There's always that assumption that, well, I've just got to do whatever I got to do to survive. Yeah, I'm sorry for that person that they got bit or they got sick or whatever, but I'm going to have to take this sharp pokery thing and jam it into their brain or use this ballistic weapon to achieve basically the same thing. You know, I feel sorry for them, but that's just, pay attention here. What I have to do to survive. No matter what, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to survive. Now, Lisa Haven, over at Restricted Republic today, danced very, very close to this topic, talking about a police shortage. And we're going to talk about that in detail in the video here at YouTube. But we have a brand spanking new video up over there at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel that we've been promising for a while. And it's a doozy, folks. I tell a very personal story from my personal life to set the stage for what's coming. There are people out there that are going to look at their situation and they're going to have two choices. Three, actually. Survival, slavery, or die. You see, when you really think about it, a survival situation and slavery, which is basically just another survival situation, are the same thing. If someone is taking you captive and you're their slave, for example, and you don't acquiesce to their wishes, they may just lop your head off with a sword, right? And you end that way. Well, if you get into a survival situation where you're just out in the middle of the woods, if you don't find a way to feed yourself, and you don't acquiesce to the situation out there and do what's necessary out there, you're just going to die slower. You may die feeling more moral about yourself, but one way or the other, you're going to die. Now, who would like to survive? Who wants to live? Who wants to continue? Who wants to see another sunrise? If not for you, for your kids, for your loved ones, for those around you that are looking to you, that can't survive on their own, join us over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. It's only $1 per month, even less if you sign up for an entire year. Fully refundable first 90 days, no questions asked. And believe me, the brand new video we have over there is going to wake a lot of people up. It's going to make a lot of people mad too, but it will wake them up. And isn't that kind of funny when you go wake somebody up? The first usual response is that they're angry. Oh, why did you wake me up? Oh, I was asleep and it felt so good. Almost universally. Well, this is the exact same thing. Over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel, we're shaking people awake and they're not happy about it. In fact, I posted the video earlier and I've already had one person delete their support. They were so upset at being woken up. And that's fine. Like I said, it's fully refundable first 90 days. No questions asked. Would love to have you. Here's a fact you're never going to get away from, folks. It is futile to try to talk facts and analysis to people who are enjoying an emotional sense of moral superiority in their ignorance. You see, that's usually where moral superiority comes from. How many of you ever heard the story about the person who trying to proselytize to you says, well, I got diagnosed with this horrible, deadly disease, and then I prayed, and then I went to my church, and they prayed for me too, and miraculously, 2 months later, I was cured of that disease, and it's because Jesus, I lived a holy life those 2 months, and Jesus loved me more than everyone else he allowed to die of cancer. You see, they don't usually say that last part, but that's what they're thinking. See, everybody else who got cancer and died, you see, they just weren't holy enough. They weren't moral enough. They weren't righteous enough. They weren't Jesus-loving enough. That's why God killed them with cancer. You see, that's basically the attitude when we talk about a group of people who've been backed into a corner, so to speak, and have no other choice but to do things from the privacy of their own home they never dreamed they'd have to do. But once again, we can't talk about that in detail here over at the Patreon channel. Now, Lisa Haven, earlier today, about 7 hours ago, what did the left just set us up for? An emergency is coming. And she talks about these staffing shortages with police departments. And I believe Lisa Haven and Justice Knight live in Arizona. And two of the cities that she talks about are Phoenix and Tucson. Now, they apparently live in the outskirts someplace that's a little bit safer. But you see, here in Florida, we don't have any police staffing shortages. Not in the least. We're paying huge bonuses to those who come, but we've got tons and tons and tons of police everywhere. There's no police shortages whatsoever in the state of Florida. You would have to wonder why. What would be the huge difference there? You see, you would literally have to have your head checked these days to work as a police officer anywhere other than the Southeast. And by the Southeast, I truly just basically mean Florida. Maybe South Carolina, maybe parts of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. Anywhere else, you would literally have to be one of the dumbest people on the planet. Why in the world would you take a job? Why in the world would you take a, remember, getting paid for-profit job voluntarily, that if you do your job a little bit wrong, you could end up in prison, your family could be demonized, you could be all over the news, you could be, made out to be worse than, some of the worst people in history like we saw back in 2020. Why in the world, if that was what could possibly happen to you, there are no other jobs? There's all sorts of other jobs, especially if you want to stay in the security field. You'd have to be crazy in those northern states. And that's why they are leaving in droves, because it's the risk reward analysis. But wait a minute, folks. I thought we were all entitled. Aren't we entitled to police protection, 911 services, fire department services? Oh, that's right. That's socialism. That's right. You see, that's the thing that the government requires. They take money out of your check. Those of you who have a job know what I'm talking about. You don't have a choice. Your boss has to take that money out of your account and put it out of your check, put it into an escrow account, and then that's for your taxes. Where those taxes go to pay? They go to pay for all sorts of things. Now, we don't have a state tax in Florida. We have money come in from other things that takes care of all those things. But it's an interesting thing to see, and I'm not talking on behalf of Justice Knight or Lisa Haven here. I don't believe they for 1 minute feel entitled to it. That's why they're worried. See, they realize what happens when nobody wants to do the job, but I've already paid my taxes to be protected. Some of these places, it's hours-long waits on 911. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, I've got my ballistic weapon. Not every emergency that you call police and fire and first responders for can be solved with a ballistic weapon. I tell you what, this is the thing about having nothing but a giant bag of hammers. Every problem's going to look like a nail. If your toolbox is nothing but a giant, huge box full of hammers, every problem's going to look like a nail. And when you run into a problem that ain't solved, you got a problem. Now, some have said, well, before I do this immoral thing or this other immoral thing, I'll go tactically camp first. Ladies, especially ladies out there, there are things out there way worse. Once you decide you want to go live the homeless, free spirit, tent city lifestyle, way worse than what I've talked about over Patreon. And it isn't just me. This is yesterday, Patriot Nurse. Sit down, y'all. We're about to hit a Judgment J-curve. 29-minute video where she talks about when judgment comes. And I don't want to give away too much from the Patreon video, but I wonder what judgment meant to the Hebrews when they were generationally enslaved by the Egyptians, and what the men were asked to do and what the women were asked to do and what had to be done just to survive. It mimics a lot what happened here when we brought indentured servants, giant air quotes there, from other countries here, and what they were forced to do to survive. See, they didn't have the luxury of principles or morals at that time. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, other countries saying dump the dollar, dump it by the millions. Disney. And this statistic should tell you everything. Those of you out there waggling your high and mighty moral little fingers right now, this should tell you everything you need to know about why what's happening online is happening. It's not because we have a morally decadent society any more so than with back in the 70s or 80s. Millennials hold 4.8% of all the wealth in the world at almost 40 years old. When Gen Xers were 40 years old, they had twice that amount of money. 9% of all wealth. But boomers, my age and beyond, when we were 40 years old, we held 21% of the world's wealth. That means comparing apples to apples, when I was 40 versus when the millennials are turning 40, 5 times as much. 5 times as much income. What would we have done back then if we had been forced to take an 80% cut in pay? Let me ask you out there, everybody out there on the side of my voice, 50, 55 and older, way back when, whenever you turned 30, 35, 40 years old, if you all of a sudden had only 20% of the income that you had at that time, what do you think you would have been forced to do? And there's a question I'll leave with on this about something that was said in Texas by Mr. Trump that I don't get. He's speaking out of both sides of his mouth, and a lot of people miss it. He is referred to Governor Desantis as some disciple of Paul Ryan or Rhino. I've seen all sorts of fake news allegations down in my comment section about him being in league with Soros, all sorts of other things, trying to paint him as some type of horrible, terrible person. But then the same people also say, well, he needs to wait his turn. Wait a minute. If he's that bad and he's that evil and he's some evil, number one, that would mean the entire state of Florida is completely, all the old people here, all the conservatives in Florida, the gunshine state, we're all completely fooled by Ron DeSantis. Every single one of us that reelected him by 20 points, we're all just completely fooled and baffled by him. But my question is, why did Trump endorse him in the first place? And why would you want him to, quote unquote, wait his turn? If he's that bad, you should never want him, right? Well, Trump is he endorsed him. There's a difference between exposing and endorsing. And if this is the case, that you say, well, he was fooled. He was another person that fooled just good Mr. Trump. How many is this now? Let's see. He was fooled by the Clintons because he was best friends with them for 20 years. Let's see. Who would be? Oh, then he was fooled by Mike Pence. And then he was fooled by Ivanka Trump's husband. And then he was fooled by Pompeo and the Marine Corps general that wouldn't do what he said. And then all these people, this long laundry list of people that he brought in to work for. And apparently they're all just a bunch of rhinos because they disagree with the guy. And this is just the latest person. So which is it? Can you confirm for me which the argument is? Should he, A, he's a really, really good guy, just needs to wait his turn. Or B, is he really just some evil leftist operative working for the global cabal? And if that's the case, if that's your answer, why did Trump endorse him? Because Trump brags about endorsing him. No, he's just so disloyal. I can't believe he... Why would you endorse him? Why were you so easily fooled? If you know so damn much. How does this work? Which is it? Wait his turn. He's a good guy, but wait his turn. Or he's not a good guy, and in which case you'd have to be the dumbest person on the planet to have endorsed him. And if that's the case, why should we vote for you if you're that stupid, Mr. Trump? If you're literally that naive that so many people that you believed and endorsed and patted on the back and said we're great. I mean, if Mr. Pence fooled you, I mean, and you made him second in command, that's a pretty big goof there. Pretty big goof. But all those other Republicans that you endorsed that now are just all of a sudden persona non grata. So I just want an answer. I just want an answer to which is it? Which side of his mouth should we believe? So, and if so, I mean, please explain the voting in Florida for DeSantis. In fact, he even said the guy that DeSantis beat by 20 points, Trump said was a good governor. Let me say this again. Trump said the guy that DeSantis beat, Charlie Crist, was a good governor. Oh, was he Republican back then? Really? He was a Republican that decided to change his mind and become a Democrat? Was Trump fooled? Was he a good guy when he was a Democrat who was a Republican, or was he a good guy when he was a Republican who thought he was a Democrat? Or do you see where I'm going with this? You see, he's gonna catch himself. He's gonna step in it again. Most pro Second Amendment president ever that take the guns first, due process second, and well, I guess we'll just have to leave that there. So anyway, check out Lisa Haven, Restricted Republic, We're Forked Up, talking about this idea that Americans, not them, I'm not talking about Lisa Haven and Justice Knight, Americans and the entitlement to all of these socialist things that are now going away because nobody wants the jobs. Nobody wants the jobs. And another great installment, Patriot Nurse, sit down, y'all. Judgment J curve time. How to invoke a curse. She's dead on. She's 100% dead on. So anyway, I will leave it there. But join us over at Patreon. I think it's something that if you're somebody who can handle, I don't want to say adult content because it's not XXX, but it's definitely R, TVMA, and discussions that don't pull any punches, would love to have you over there. $1, that's it. $1 per month, even less if you sign up for an entire year. You get an entire year for less than $12. And like I said, up to 90 days, fully refundable. No questions asked. And there's hundreds of videos over there. So I'll leave it there. God bless. Have a great week. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.